My name is Lou Jobs, Lewjobs. That's the name that I was given when I was adopted. My birth name is Alan Craig Grubin. That's the name that my biological mom gave me. Right now, I currently live in Spruce Grove, Alberta. So I was born, my home community is Tuktoyaktuk, Northwest Territories. That is home to me. I still consider it to this day home. I was born in the hamlet. I was born in the nursing station. Um, Most of the people up there now get flown into Inuvik, so I am one of the few that actually can say I was born in Tuktoyaktuk, so I'm quite proud of that. My journey started, I was taken at birth and put into a receiving home, and at 3 weeks, I was given to the foster home who eventually adopted me. And that was in Fort McPherson, Northwest Territories. So I was taken away in Tuktoyaktuk. I'm assuming that the receiving home was in Inuvik, Northwest Territories, and then flown by bush plane into Fort McPherson, Northwest Territories, and given to a white family. He was a teacher at the school there. From there, he went back to university. He was from the University of Edmonton. That's where he went to the university. And that's when I was taken out of the Northwest Territories and grew up in Alberta. I don't remember. I don't remember any of that because it was at birth, literally at birth, right? The day I was born, I was taken away from my mom. She went back 24 hours later, and I was already gone. So the last time I saw her was when I was 26 years. The next time I saw her would be 26 years old. So I have no memories of my birth, my biological family at all. So my experiences in my adopted home kind of varied. The younger years were quite. I would. I have fond memories of the lady who adopted me. I would call her my mom. Um, so my mom and dad divorced, and then he remarried, and that's when dynamics changed. But my early years, I have really fond memories of. They were good. Other than the divorce, which really, unsettled me as a child. I didn't understand things like that. I was 5 or 6 years old when she left. So, and then he was single for a while, and then he met a German woman who's a widow, married her. Um, that's when abuses started to happen from her. She became pregnant. At the time, I was his only child. Now he had a biological child. So that's when dynamics in my life really changed. So I was 14 years old when Tim came along, and that's about the same time that I was forced out of the house. I had no, there was no connection for me. I didn't know I was Indigenous. How I found out I was Inuit. So growing up, I was teased in school. They would call me Asian slurs. Now I don't know if I should. I don't want to say the names. I don't think. I don't think I need to. Right? I think people understand. Anyways, they would call me these names, and it would really upset me. And I'd go back to my mom and say, "Well, why are they calling me this?" And she said, "Well, you're not." But she wouldn't tell me that I was Inuit. And I said, "Well, why do they keep doing this?" Well, it's because you're different. Right? That's all they would say. And you're loved and you're accepted. So when I'm 10 years old, the man who adopted me brought one of his cousins over from Germany. And we went up to Yellowknife, Northwest Territories for the first time. It was the first time I went back to the territories. And I'm sitting in a restaurant and I'm looking at this lady and I'm saying, and she leaves, it's a waitress, right? And I looked at my dad and said, "How did the Chinese lady get up here?" And he said, "Well, she's Inuit." And he laughed, he chuckled, and said, "She's Inuit." And that's when it dawned on me. All those years, I was, um, being compared to being Asian, I actually found out it was Inuit, and it totally made sense at that time. I was born in Tuktoyaktuk, to get all, but they had never told me that I was Indigenous. So that's how I found out. The communities I was raised in a number of different communities. He was a teacher, and we moved fairly often to remote locations. So grades 1 and 2 were in Grimshaw, Alberta. Grades 3 and 4 were in southern Alberta, in a little town just north of Lethbridge called Lowland, a little hamlet there. Grades 5 and 6 were in Meander River. That's an Indian reserve north of High Level. Grades 6, 7, and 8 were in Lacrete, Alberta, which is a Mennonite community. Grades 9 was back in a southern Alberta community. Grade 10, I went to Concordia College. That's when I was 14 years old. And I quit school in grade 11. So that's my school history. How I was treated was quite different depending on the location, I would have to say. So in Grimshaw, Alberta, that's where the Asian slurs started, right? The Indian Reserve, it was very different. That was during that was in 1970, early 70s, mid 70s. So the residential school system was still going on, and this school was one of the first ones that they had built by the Alberta government on the reserves for grades 1 through 9. And I didn't understand it at the time. And nobody, there's a thing also, I was like, as a 60s school survivor, I had no idea about residential schools. Nobody taught us this stuff. I didn't see very many people that looked like me, right? So we're living on the reserve. That was different. It was very eye-opening. It was very interesting to hear a white father describe to me Indigenous people, right? There were some racial things that were said, and I accepted that, never questioned it, right? In fact, I probably perpetuated it as I grew older, if anything. So I'd say 9 years old, on living in Meander River. I was actually abused by a native boy, and didn't like it. I had no idea. I didn't know that. I never even told my father. Never told anybody growing up. I resented Indians after that. Sorry for saying that, but. And then I started to realize that as I got older, I felt bad for the boy because he was not much older than me. And if he had done that to me, then somebody certainly would have done that to him. And this was just, to him, was normal behavior. And I think that's what's the saddest thing of all. My relationship with my adopted family right now, I don't have one anymore. It was sketchy at best from the age of 16 on, when I was basically kicked out of the home. I would go back in and see check in and out every now and again, just to let them know I was still alive. But I'll never forget the day that I heard the words out of the man who adopted me, "I wish I'd never seen you." So I tried my best to make that happen. Those are words I'll never forget. He since apologized and said it was done in anger, but those are words that you just don't forget, especially as an adopted person, especially as an Indigenous adopted person, and understanding the dynamics of everything that happened, up to that point. So I would pop in with his, say hi every now and again. There's some homelessness in my adulthood, young adulthood. So I would sort of just stay in touch periodically. And then when I hit sobriety, when I was 40, I made an effort to reconnect with him. And it was going well until I started working with a 60 Scoop Society in Alberta. And that's kind of when things fell apart. So.
Mm-hmm. Was your adoption success or did it break down? And how old were you when it broke down?
I would say my adoption was successful up until the first marriage ended. He did okay as a single dad. I can't fault him for being a single dad. He wasn't a bad person, right? His second wife is when things really broke down. And when she gave him his first biological child, that is when things really went sideways for me, because up until that point, I was his only child. So he did not have anybody to carry on his legacy. And it's very important for him. And now that he had his own biological child, the woman he married, who didn't like me, who abused me every day for 4 years, looked at him and said, either he goes or I go. And when I go, I'm taking your baby with me. So that's how that broke down. I can finally comfortably identify as an Inuit man. It has taken sorry. Okay. It took a long time to be able to say that. So, my identity also goes along with finally being accepted in my home community. And I think it's something I waited a long time for. So I still feel out of place with them. I'm not sure that's ever going to go away, but that we can joke around and call each other cousin and all that other stuff and have good times and good laughs. It's good in that sense. I can identify as my Inuit family. So yes, I did. For the longest time, I wanted to find my birth family. 1966, 67, they had what were called closed adoptions, sealed the birth records. So your biological family can find you, and if you're an adoptee or your birth family or your adopted family, they closed those records so they couldn't share where you came from as well. I was always told I was adopted. They never hid that from me. So I think I was 19 or 20, and the woman who adopted me, my mom, calls me up out of the blue and says, here, you got to write this number down. I don't know how she did it. So I write down these names and known phone numbers. She says, that's your sister, that's your biological sister, that's your biological mom, you need to call them. And that's how I found them. It's through my adopted mom. I'm not sure how she pulled it off. I'm not sure how she managed to do it, but she is the reason why I met my biological family. What's changed for me after making contact with my home community is a sense of belonging, In a way, I'm homesick more. You know, I want my kids to experience where I'm originally from. I think that'd be a pretty cool thing. I've distanced myself, and not so much of my own. It's more not so much my choice, but theirs from my adopted family. They just didn't, not much more to do with me. So that's never. I don't think that's ever gonna go back. So the most significant impact I think would have been growing up as a young adult, as a teenager, 16 years old, on your own. Uh, Ended up living on the street. Um, and having to learn how to fit in everywhere, even though you weren't that. I mean, it was something that I had to learn how to. It's almost like you're a chameleon. You could change if you needed to, right? You could turn yourself into anything. It's the strangest thing. Um, there's a lot of alcohol and drug abuse that happened along the way. Alcohol was really, really impactful for me. So from the age of 10 to 14, the woman beat the spirit out of me every day. And then when I was 14 years old, I discovered alcohol. And this thing, it gave me back my confidence. It gave me back my spirit. It gave me back my fight. It gave me, I wasn't this awkward, abused kid. I felt empowered. And that's what hooked me with alcohol. And that was the impact. I drank from the age of 14 until I was 40. Heavy, heavy. That would have been the worst. So my process of healing that I've started, probably started back in 2007 when I managed to achieve sobriety. I went through. I went to a place called Poundmaker's Lodge, which is in St. Albert, Alberta. It's a First Nations treatment center, and I went there from the remand center. I was in jail at the time. I was arrested, and my lawyer at the time, I thought, clearly you're an alcoholic. I'd heard that spiel before. I'd been in jail a few times, and every lawyer had always told me you're an alcoholic, you need help. And my response was always, mind your own fucking business. I'm good, right? But this man seemed to impact me. But there was a few other things that impacted me along the way. One, my son was born. He was born in 2007. So he was apprehended from his mom when I was in jail. So that was child number 2 for me in the child welfare system. And that's kind of what made me my lawyer asked if I wanted to try treatment. And he said, listen, you might want to listen to me. He had a black key tag in treatment circles. Black key tags means multiple years of sobriety. So when he showed that to me, I started to get it. I said, listen, maybe he does know what he's talking about. So I tried the treatment thing, and this time it stuck because I tried other treatment centers before that didn't work. This time it stuck because they have a sweat lodge. And I will never forget. I think it was my second sweat, and the elder, a couple, a man and a woman elder, and it was a combined sweat, men and women in here. On the third round, he said, "Pray for something that you would like," and I prayed. To never have a desire to drink again. And I haven't had that desire since that day. So that was part of the healing. That also meant I had to deal with a lot of the mental abuse or the mental health stuff that goes along with that as well, right? A lot of work on yourself and stuff. What I am currently doing is I've been seeing a psychologist every week now for 4 years, like online. So, and trying to stay in touch with as much ceremonial stuff as I can. So smudging, spell lodges, things like that. People should know that there is nothing wrong with the way we raised, but there's nothing wrong with how my mom raised her family. There are other brothers and sisters. Out of all my brothers and sisters, my biological brothers and sisters, I'm the only one with a criminal record. They were raised by my mom, right? So this idea that we don't know how, that we're not good parents, that we don't know how to raise our kids, that we don't love them, that's got to stop, right? That's not true at all. And the other thing I want people to know is that it really hasn't stopped. I have a daughter being raised by a white family. You know, they have they took her in 2000. They gave her up for adoption in 2010, so 13 years ago. You know, my biological mom passed away 2 years ago from cancer. Coming up right away here, actually just a couple of days ago. It's her anniversary. But we were, while she was going through treatment at Edmonton, we became really close, and we would go for drives and talk. And that is one of the things that we shared. She said, "You don't have no idea what it's like to lose a child to the system." And I looked at her and said, "Yeah, I do." And she had forgotten that she had lost a that was her granddaughter, you know, that they took, right? And she said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." But we talked about that. We talked about what they told her when I was taken. They told her, "Listen, you're just going to have to get over it. You're just going to have to learn to move on." And then I looked at her and said, "That's what they said," because it was amazing, because those exact same words they said to me when they took my daughter and they gave her to adoption to this white family. "Well, I'm sorry, Lou, but you're just going to have to get over it. You just got to learn to move on." And we looked at each other like they hadn't even changed the words. You know, that is something that I should never have to share with my mother, right? Is that same experience. So I would like people to know that it still happens, right? Wrongfully happens. And the other thing people should know is that it's this idea that you can just parachute us back into our home communities out of the blue and everything's good again is bullshit. That's just not going to work. You've taken us, you've turned us inside out, and now you're putting us back into a place that we don't feel we belong. And people are looking at us and they're going, "Who are you? You know, you look like us, but you don't talk like us. You certainly don't act like us." And it doesn't always work out for the best. Some of us have great experiences. I've heard more often than not on a negative side because they were parachuted in. Like, "Okay, we fixed this." That's not how you fix it. That's not how it's going to be fixed. So. I go back to my home community and they remember me as Baby Alan. They remember me as Lou. They never knew me as Lou. They changed my name to Llewellyn Jobs. But they remember Baby Alan being taken away, and that was me. And then to share that experience with other survivors, and the similarities are remarkable. You know, we all have different journeys, but we can all sure understand exactly where the other person came from. You know, the loss and the longing for family and wanting to belong. I think that's all something that we share. Some of us had good experiences, some of us had very horrible ones, right? But yeah, that's just the numbers. Right? People need to know just how many people were directly affected by this. I don't think they understand.